My name is Will. I work in investment management, not property specifically. I came across Mecca Property Group through a recommendation of a close friend who I've known for many years. She also works in investment management. Yeah, so we've always wanted to get a foot in the door. I didn't own any property up until I met you. And obviously, getting older in life, but we've always moved around quite a lot because of my partner's work. And so we haven't really been able to settle down as such in an area. And so, we didn't know where we'd end up. But at the same time, we didn't want to get left behind and, wanted to get some sort of foot in the door with property. And so that's where, an investment property made sense. Something that would help us at least sleep at night a bit better. Part of it was the lack of time to actually go out there and inspect the properties. You physically have to go in different areas to have a look. One was that we didn't really know where to buy, and the time to do that research. But there's also just the knowledge of, what the right property looks like. There's horror stories of properties that have issues, right? So just all of that as one package was something we're looking for. I was thinking a property further out of the city, somewhere, quite remote, because I thought that was actually all I could afford. And so as we talked through different areas and what areas would be good to purchase in, we actually landed on Melbourne, and actually not too far away from the city. So in a suburb called Hadfield, which is about 12 kilometers as the crow flies from the city, so actually quite central. And I was interested in buying a house, not an apartment, because I kind of wanted to get exposure to some sort of a block of land, because I felt that was really what was going up in price, and that was really wanted to get that sort of investment in. So we settled on an older house, but in good condition. It cost about $850,000 to make an investment. And because the block of land was so big, we were actually able to build a small granny flat at the back. And that granny flat was built through another company that Mecca Property actually had a very close relationship with. And so Mecca were actually able to guide me through that process along with the granny flat builder. And so not just the property selection, but actually the process of having that secondary dwelling built. So that was really valuable as well. Yeah, so if the property would have been $850,000 to purchase, the expected rent for that house would have been about $650 a week. I think loosely that comes out to like a yield of 3% and change. And so we then built a granny flat for $175,000, but that increased the rent by almost 2/3 on top. So the granny flat then rented out for $420 a week, and the main house rented for I think $600. So we, for a little bit more, essentially had a much higher yield, and the yield, what we ended up getting was an investment that essentially had the yield of an apartment, but the land of a house. So kind of getting the best of both worlds. I guess some of the curveballs were more around once it was actually rented out. Obviously had a real estate agent managing that. And so, there's the quality can really be up and down with rental agents. And, we did run into some issues from time to time with the tenants, maintenance issues. For example, the neighbor also he was building a house, so he wanted to replace the fence. And so as quotes came through or like queries came through from the agents or the tenants, I was always just able to kind of just do a quick check with you around, does this look right? Does this make sense? I remember we split the cost of a fence with the neighbor, and he did the quote, and I was just able to run it by you in terms of like as a reasonable check. And so that was just like very useful for me to get my head around what's reasonable and what's not. And I really appreciated that. So yeah, I think for me, so we're still in a phase where we're moving around in different areas. So, we just moved house maybe 6 months ago, and we're still renting. It's probably not going to be the last place that we live. But one day we'd like to settle down. Like our family is still all in Sydney. And so we're just cognizant of like, future cost of living, and not necessarily retirement, but, just being able to afford living in Sydney. And the fact that we don't own property in Sydney, means that we have to find some other way to invest that keeps up with the cost of living in Sydney. And so that's not necessarily all property, but some component of that being property makes sense, just from a risk perspective. And so I guess just conscious that we own a house in Melbourne, but the cost of housing a house in Sydney is at least twice the price. So probably makes sense to own another house somewhere in Australia, that if we wanted to eventually buy a house in Sydney, we could sell those and trade for it. Like, I guess what I'd say is, life changes. You might have an idea in your mind of where you want to live and buy property, but then I've seen people's lives change, and maybe they outgrow, or they evolve in their needs. And so sometimes we have a property in mind that we want to buy and just live in for the rest of our lives, but actually having some flexibility is also nice. And so what I like about what we've been able to do with Mecca is we've been able to get a bit more of a measure of safety in terms of our finances, but at the same time we're not locked into any kind of place or lifestyle, and so we're able to kind of evolve as we like. Yeah, it's been a huge win to be able to buy a house that's positively geared.